Thanks for joining us. Paul Armstrong here at eNthusaProve, and delighted to share with you today some more ideas about how we as leaders in enabling joy, helping people to connect, create value, and can contribute, that we want to take advantage of the great stuff that helps people connect and create value in the area that might be called Myers-Briggs, or we're going to abbreviate it and use what's called temperaments. And we have another video out there, and it's when the 4 temperaments sit on attack. And the value of that is that when we sit on attack, you see the immediate response. And that's really one of the big takeaways that you want when you're dealing with anything that has to do with Myers-Briggs and temperaments. We're talking about preferences, and those preferences are where we first go. Doesn't mean we're not going to use our other gifts. It just means we're going to grab one, and that's going to be our first response. So what I like to do is walk through another scenario, and we're going to take a look at the first response. But what I want you to remember here is that that's just the first response. Our first response isn't our only response. We follow up with other ones depending on how the need goes. Remember that while we have preferences, we spend our day in all of them, whether our preferred temperament or not. We're going to spend our day in all of them. And so the trick is remembering that when we're spending in our non-preferred preferences, it uses more energy than in our preferred one. It's not about competence. It's not about any of that. It's not about maturity. It's not about right or wrong. It's about energy. But it is kind of fun as leaders and valuable to sort of know beforehand where that first response is going to probably prefer to be headed based on knowing something about our people's temperaments and our own, okay? Because we can always change our own behavior. So here's the scenario. There's a fire in the building, okay? There's a fire in the building. And so what's going to happen? One person's going to walk up and see the fire and say, oh, there must be a way to put this out. Where's the instructions? How do I get the fire extinguisher out? There's going to be another person that walks up and says, is everyone safe? Okay. Another person's going to walk up and they're going to sort of analyze the fire. Like, oh, what sort of fire is this? What would be the best way to put this fire out? And another person's going to walk up and say, wow, there's a fire. Boy, how did we not know about this? And gee whiz, is there something we should be learning about this as we're, to get is there a way around putting this out? Then there's going to be the folks that are going to look at it and say, are we able to put this out? Okay, what do we have the right tools, and what type of fire is this? And is this a big fire or a little fire? They're all about competence. And then there's going to be, of course, the folks that are going to say, let's just put the fire out. Let's grab something, put it out. Well, let's walk back and take a study on those. The people that walk up, and if you paid attention, you'll notice that I went through 5 different people there. And we always talk about 4 temperaments, because I'm going to take one of the temperaments and split it apart. And that's going to be this first one. So the temperament in Keirsey terms is called guardian. Okay? It's the folks that have a preference for sensing data and closure, the J part, so the S and the J. But I'm going to peel them apart into 2 parts. So let's take a look at who we might call what Keirsey calls a supervisor. I'm not too crazy about that term. I'm going to call it, the administrator type. Okay, the ones that is really good at maintaining the competence that we have now, and realizing we have instructions, probably for a good reason, let's follow them. That's the S, a T for logical, and the J. Okay, and when they come up, their first inclination is there a procedure for putting this out? What is the way we've been taught to do this? That's a great thought, because we don't want to just throw all of our training aside, do we? It's a great thought. That's the value they're bringing. If we just look at their little counterpart in the guardian temperament, so S, sensing data, relational decision making, so it F, and still a drive for closure, J, so SFJ, and by and large those folks are called the protectors or the providers, okay? So it's a very nurturing, we care about the people, and so what are they saying? Is everyone safe? Okay, so they're looking at, are we going to maintain relationships through and after this fire? And those big relationships are the ones we have with people. Let's look out for the people. It's a great thing we have those folks around. It's not just about reading the directions about the fire extinguisher. It's also making sure that someone who can't get down the steps is being helped down the steps. Now let's take a look at the type that overall is called the rational, if you look at Keirsey terms. And in my other video, I call it the architect type. But also in that group is what I would call the executive type. I'm not crazy. The Keirsey term is field marshal. I think that carries a little baggage. But in any case, it's the type that has a preference for intuitive data, logical decision making, okay? And so it's the N and the T. And they're the ones that walk up and they say, what type of fire is this? What is the best way to put this fire out? Is it a chemical fire? And we need that too, because we all know that maybe the fire extinguisher doesn't work on the type of fire we're looking at. It's also about, are we competent to do this? And that's important too, because we know we could get hurt in a fire by doing it wrong. So we need the competence. So thankfully we have those types of people also. Then there's a type of person that looks at it and says, wow, how does this happen, and what are we supposed to be learning from this, and what's the best way, what options do we have for putting it out? So they're opening up the ideas for possibilities, both for now and for later, okay? And while that might not seem really great when there's a fire right now, it helps us because it's saying this could happen again, and we want to make sure we're ready the next time. And that is when we have folks who prefer intuitive data gathering and relational decision making, and so it's N and F. The Keirsey term for that is idealist, which again might carry a little baggage. You might think a daydreamer, but really that's where our teachers and counselors are. And so that's good because they help us deal with the situation and build for the future. And so it's good that we have them, because when their takeaway is going to make sure that maybe we don't have a fire next time. And then if you remember, I said, of course, we got the folks that just say, let's just put it out. They're the action-oriented ones. And the Keirsey term for that is artisan. It's when you have a preference for sensory data and logical or relational decision-making, but they have a preference for the data. So they're S and P, okay? And so in that crowd is the crafters, the promoters, the performers. I kind of like the word artisan. They're the sort of the action-oriented people. And of course we need them. We need to respond to the fire. We need to respond quickly. But notice that it's not just about responding. When we tell the story, people think, oh, thank goodness somebody put out the fire. No, they all put out the fire. They all are going to make sure that people are safe. They're all going to make sure we put out the fire correctly. They all are going to say, my goodness, we don't want this to happen again. What are we learning from this? So you as a team leader, you're capitalizing on these very different sounding first reactions, these preferences for the burning building. But we also know that people, when I'm saying, what can we learn from this? My next thought is, well, let's just get this out now. When I'm saying, let's put this out, my next one's going to be like, oh, are there instructions for the fire extinguisher? When we say, is everyone safe? We're also going to be saying, is there a way that we know everyone's safe? And so what you see is the preference tells us what our first response is likely to be. Not always, not a perfect predictor, but it's where that first nanosecond of energy goes. It grabs that tool. And if we're leaders and we realize who's grabbing that tool first, and we realize there's a role for all those tools when the building is burning, that then we can perhaps assign our people to respond, to be response-able in a really cool, enabling joy way. Because now they know how to connect to the situation, how they're connected to each other despite their differences, how they're connected to the purpose of putting that fire out, and how they're going to be able to create value to the overall purpose of put the fire out now and improve for the future. So hopefully it's a fun little peek in how the various temperaments respond to there's a fire in the building. We can see that we need all of them. And we as leaders, we want to capitalize on helping our team be strong by being wholly human and relying on all the gifts. And we can do that best by enabling joy. Hope this was fun. Let's have a conversation about it. Meanwhile, you take care. Bye-bye.